Okay, this time we're going to go into one of the anomalies found in the younger Dryas events. I've done quite a few videos on this. I've shown some things that Graham Hancock says about it, what Randall Carlson says about it, what a few other people say about it, and quite often they give me another piece to a picture that I never knew. And that helps give you another puzzle piece here. But what we're going to talk about this time, and I hope this is a short video and concise enough. We're trying for it to be this time. I'm not trying to just ramble on, and I'm trying not to bring in so many other things. But I could easily. Y'all know me. Anyhow, the anomaly here is that we've had many ice ages, okay? And we can find this in ice cores and all kinds of things that literally show this. And I'll show you a graph right here showing you that here's one, here's one, here's one. And as I talked about in an earlier video about this, there kind of looks like a heartbeat of the Earth that it goes on. And it takes a large amount of time to go through each one of these. But what's weird about it? What's so different about this younger Dryas effect and everything? Well, we're just going to pinpoint about 400,000 years or so. Now, some of these animals that disappeared at the end of the younger Dryas, that went away, were around preemptive to that, and some developed right shortly after that. But giving you that idea of 400,000 is about a correct representation where we can go, okay, so here it is, and here's the concept I'm trying to give you on this idea. Because we have these dips, as you can see on the graph that's here, and so we have our warming period, we're during the warm, and then we drop off drastically repeatedly here, peck, 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 all the way through it. Almost looks like a heartbeat if you ever watched one. But the anomaly here is the fact that even though it dipped quite a bit, and even right here at this one looks like it dips a little colder than even the younger Dryas did whenever it bounced back down, it was gradual enough coming into it in effects, and we didn't lose any of these animals. These ideas of saber-toothed cats, of dire wolves, of the many types of mammoths, of the camel-type creatures, of giant sloths, and things that I've talked about, which, like the white sands footprints that they find where they see a mammoth here and a saber-toothed tiger and a giant sloth, and I was like, that looks like the movie The Ice Age. But what's weird about it is they went through all of these, and there were no mass extinction events, guys and gals. They lived through all of these. They were able to live through all of these. But now let's pinpoint on the younger Dryas, and you can see this spike where it's warming up, and then there's a thing called the balling rod, which warmed up the planet a little faster than it normally does in all the other heartbeats before it, and has a spike. And then directly after that spike, not too many hundreds of years apparently, wham! It goes down to being colder than it was in the last ice age rapidly. Some say almost overnight. There are a lot of people that give a range of dates in here and try to give that, but what it looks like is not just one event, but multiple events. Was there a volcano thing that happens? Was there a solar flare that flashed across the Earth and caused a huge problem, as Robert Schoch shows? Or was there a fragmentary comet that hit the Earth basically on all the continental ice shelves that are about 2 miles deep at this time, and when they came in the atmosphere, they caused a airburst, bolide explosion, that was over there, and so it left us no craters, because if that wasn't in effect, we could easily see the craters. probably, and the destruction that happened if we dug down. But we don't find them. But what we do find is weird anomalies that go with this, which other people talk about, like pulse water 2b, where all of a sudden the oceans of the earth rose up 400 to 420 feet, seemingly in a short amount of time. And we don't have a way to find out at this point if it was done in about a week, if it was done in a couple of years, or it took 15, 20, 30 years to make it all happen. But it flooded the world up because a lot of the populations live on coastal and off rivers and things, predominantly. So we can find that those places would have all been devastated by this. And I've said before, the biblical flood was based on this idea, on a mythology that comes down through time from at least 10,500 BC, where these people had come up with an idea of a flood that happened. And even the flood in the Bible talks about how it comes up from beneath, as well as does that. And of course it said it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And when I was a kid, I was like, if it rains as hard as I've ever heard of raining for 40 days and 40 nights, it's going to flood places out a little bit, but it's not going to flood to that ideal that people think of as being over the mountains. And where could the water possibly go? And apologists try to make all kinds of statements about this, but they're all BS. They get picked through, and you take somebody that know what the hell's going on, and geologists and people, like Randall Carlson showing you all these flood effects that went on and everything, and it shows you drastic things happened. One way or another, drastic things happened. But what was so different about the younger Dryas form of us coming out of the last ice age that wasn't in effect in the last 4 or 5 before that? Because all of these creatures we're talking about, and I'll show you a picture representation I've shown a few times of here, of this grouping of animals containing mammoths, sloths, dire wolves, flat-faced or short-nosed bears, just all kinds of animals. An armadillo type creature that was almost as big as a VW bug. Just all kinds of things that if they were still on this planet right now, we'd be in a different world. And we wouldn't have gotten to where we've been able to get to because there's been a fruition that happened that wouldn't have happened. Sidestep for a moment, I've talked about how you think of lions as only being in this one area of deepest Africa and stuff, but we used to have lions all across Europe. We had variations of that lion and saber-toothed tigers and things across North America. I've gone to the La Brea tar pits and seen all the things about it and everything too, but it shows you that it didn't happen the way people have been trying to push a narrative, and there's that effect where they don't like that narrative so bad that the first few people, and even into modern times when they try to show you this type of information, people want to cancel them. They want to take somebody that's world-renowned and turn them into a fool, try to make them lose their job at universities and things like that, because they found something coming out of a rabbit hole. And then, believe you me, they tested this out and looked at more and more information, and they're like, oh, wow. And then when they put it out to the public, they don't like that. And then somehow the public, in some type of genre effect, get in on the idea and go, oh, he's stupid, and they try to just destroy him. Like they've recently done to Graham Hancock about talking about there were civilizations that had a lot more going on than what we were taught through school all the way. And I've shown you a lot of this effects. Whether it's talking about advanced math that they knew or whatever, but one thing for sure, they knew things like the Pythagorean theorem before the Pythagorean theorem. They knew all this, they knew all of that. And one thing that we can find that points out, not only did we lose a large amount of these larger animals on the planet in North America and over in the old world, as we say, with all the mammoths that were gone there. They have found mammoths that look like this guy was knocked down in the middle of eating. It broke his hips, and then he was frozen in some 12 to 20 hours. So if the guy's already able to live in the ice and does fine all the way through it like it's not a problem, how drastic did this have to be to kill this mammoth in less than 12 to 20 hours when he's still got food in his mouth and gut is full of food that's not been digested? And people have figured this out because you can test it, and in 12 to 20 hours he's gone. Okay, well, if we took a deep freeze and we were to take something like an elephant and put a fur coat on an elephant and throw him in there, how long would it take for him to freeze? Oh, it'd take a lot longer than that. We're talking about a cold spike that means much more. It's not even just a deep freeze where we're looking at not 32 degrees but 0. We're looking at things that break well under that. And it happened so rapidly that it took out most of the flora and fauna that was going on at that time. That's where the younger Dryas concept comes from. Dryas octopetala is a flower that grows right near the Arctic regions and stuff, and everybody sees that they're growing down here and they're migrating north as this is all melting away, like shown in the graph here. And then all of a sudden, wham, it's gone again. And it takes a good long time before they come back up, because they were driven south, and the southern ones show up a lot more, pinching down on the earth. But it takes a lot longer for them to get back up into the region that they're checking at, because it's so frozen over, they don't grow anymore. That's why the younger Dryas has that name. Some 200 creatures, or a little bit more, were taken off this planet in one time that lived through all of these last 4 ice ages, and they all appear to have the same heartbeat to them. But there's something real irregular about this last heartbeat right here. This is where the Earth had a heart attack. This is the place where something so drastic happened, even though they were able to easily live through it all of these other 400,000 years worth of time. Suddenly, they're taken off the planet. Some 55 genera of animals are taken out. 200 different forms of animals are all gone in the blink of an eye, in geologic terms. And sure, in Wrangel Island, mammoths lived on, and so I'm not talking about the anomalies of that happening, or if there's some weird island like King Kong came from that still has giant epithecus on it, or something along that range, but it took them out. And if that doesn't hit home enough, there were a people called the Clovis people, which America used to be based on this Clovis first idea, which has been destroyed repeatedly. I can show you fairly quickly a couple of articles here talking about Bluefish Caves and all these other ones, including of Galt, Texas, right down here south of me, that shows you 18,000 years. It just beats the idea that they could have even come across some Bering ice bridge and even made it with the time that they did. And no, they weren't first. In fact, I made a video a couple of years ago called Clovis Fourth ? Because it looks like we had at least that many. And in that video I mentioned another effect. There's a Cerruti mastodon site near San Diego, and I've looked at the archaeological data and where they had, and somebody had taken this thing apart in eating it and broke its hips off and then stood them up in the dirt and so on, and no one can correlate how that could have possibly happened from anything else. I mean, no giant sloth or any creature that would have been around right then could have taken a mastodon out and then carved him up real good like a butcher and then broke off his hip bones and stood him up there and everything else. Much less, a lot of the bones are cracked open in a way to where they get the marrow and things onto them. But that right there is, like 134,000 years. saying there were people in the Americas way back then. So we're jumping past the last ice age into the younger Dryas, past that, through the ice age and back out to the last time it was warm, and there they are. And then there are people that showed up here then. And of course, Homo sapiens is over 325,000 years now, found from the Jebel Erud site, and so it could have definitely been them. But after this younger Dryas point, the Clovis people are gone. They don't seem to exist anymore, and if there was a little remnant, we do see some artifacts showing up as a later tool-making people, but they've lost that Clovis point idea and changed it into something else that's totally different, which I'll show you picture variation. Here's a Clovis, here's that. Well, what does Clovis come from? Well, it appears to come from the Solutreans. But the Solutreans were Western European people dating back over 25,000 years. And it looks like they had come across, and they were the ones fighting mammoths and stuff on the old world. But then, due to the ability of eating seals and what's known as the great auk, which was the penguin, which are supposed to be only in South America, are actually Antarctic, below South America. North America and the North Pole and Alaska and those situations used to have this great auk, which was this big old penguin type thing, but it's gone now. And of course, they thought, well, they ate them all up trying to do this. No, I think that's one of those 200 that have gone out of that, because again, things like that, if you were to go right now, even with machine guns and anything that you have, and you went and tried to take out all the penguins, you'd have a hard time. They'd migrate and they'd do different things, and you wouldn't be able to take out all the penguins. But this great auk was the size of an emperor penguin or bigger, and so good meat and things on that, and that these Solutreans lived off of that. And one unbelievable part of it is Dennis Stafford and a couple of people that work at the Smithsonian Institution have found this information and tried to come out with it. Whenever we look at it as the Smithsonian as people hiding things like all the giant bones that they found before and all these things that they didn't want to agree upon, even though Abraham Lincoln mentions them in one of his famous speeches and stuff at Niagara when he's talking to people there, and he says, the giants of the bones of America looked upon this great Niagara as we look on it today and stuff, and you know, it just woofed right past it there. But what? And this isn't a story about giants and things and ideas. This is a story about the younger Dryas and a video about it, where showing that these people that were Solutrean points and Clovis points, which is a slight twist and a variation on the theme, ended up basically disappearing about this same time as 200 of these major animals took us down to where there were very few left of anything. There's some buffalo and this, that, and the other, and that's it. But there used to be giant sloths that are huge. Picture something about like a hamster or a guinea pig that's about the size of an elephant that has claws on it that are long as hell and they can protect themselves. And they're not this slow, lumbering thing like the sloth that we think of in the zoos and so on. Saber-toothed tigers, which is some giant form of a mountain lion that had these saber teeth. Well, when I was a kid and you're into dinosaurs and everything, that's so cool. But you were like, how do they even eat with that in the way and everything? And not just one kind of mammoth. There's many types of mastodons and mammoths, and they're all gone too. So something extremely drastic happened. And it isn't just the hiccup of the heartbeat of the world, because that had happened with all these creatures we're referring to. Basically all 200 of them have been around through 4 times of this happening, not having an issue at all. And then all of a sudden with this younger Dryas event, and boom, And this black matte layer showing that, well, there could be some volcanic things going on, and they believe 10% of the Earth caught all at one time, but they don't, just like the dinosaurs, whenever they went away, they were like, well, it looks like what you're saying is true, but if we can't find a crater, we can't prove it, and so using scientific method, we've got to leave it as the theory. And oil drilling people there on the peninsula, we think of Cozumel and Cancun and so on in that area there, knew that this was there for a while before they even talked up about it, because they were trying to get oil out of it. But at the same time, they found that, and they go, okay, well, this could be it. Well, really, it's only something that's a 6-kilometer wide asteroid that hit there, and that caused enough problems to kill off the dinosaurs and turn off what's left of them, and ideas like velociraptor and stuff turned into chickens and ostriches. Totally reshaped the world and changed everything totally. And a lot of people agree and understand that nowadays. But if somebody tries to show you something happened at the end of the last ice age, there's a problem, isn't there? Especially if they don't want to believe it. In a world full of flat earthers and people believe that the earth is only 6,000 years old and a woman grew from a rib and ate from a magic tree because a wise walking talking serpent told her to, and want to believe that narrative of the world being created 6,000 years ago as opposed to the fact that there are people living before and after there. It didn't start off with 2 people right there, and we're sure of it. And by the way, if that was the way everything went, the world would only be Caucasians. That book doesn't mention Oriental people or Eskimos or Islanders or black people or anybody except for Caucasians. In fact, Noah landed in the Caucasus Mountains. So I'm not going to go off in left field here. I'm going to stop this video here, but there are so many things that have proven that the narratives given on that and were in effect recently are really not true at all. In fact, it went quite differently than that in many ways. And because of that fact, that kind of negates the whole thing of the Old Testament. And if the New Testament is based on that, it kind of goes from there. And I may do a series of videos. I kind of feel odd about doing videos about Christianity and things because of knowing so many people like that idea and they're so entrapped on it, and my brother being one of them especially. It almost hurts me to turn around and do it, but there are things that kick off, and I've got a brain, whoops, and so eventually I have to say, if I'm supposed to be showing you in all these videos things that are reality and stuff and everything, I can't leave that alone. That's one of the worst things that there could be agreed upon as being the fact whenever it's not. So I still have to make videos to tackle that every once in a while. And if you want to go into it deep, there's people like Myth Vision and Gnostic Informant and all these other guys that they have on their show that are professionals at this and have gone into depth of it, whether it's Bart Ehrman or a lot of other people, and they can show you the reality of things versus what you're trying to get taught, And it's kind of weird. It's kind of that idea of like, if I grew you up on an island, I could teach you a language which you would think would be cool, and it wouldn't be cool, and no one on earth can understand you. Because I'd teach you something like Mambo, Dogface, and a banana patch meant something that it doesn't, and you'd go showing up. If anybody showed up, you'd Mambo, Dogface, and banana patch, and they would just giggle their ass off. I could basically, if you're stranded on an island like that, teach you a lot of things that are not true at all, but you'd still be believing them, and it's amazing what would end up coming out of those people that were on that island if anybody ever finally found them, right? I mean, you can start from the idea of Blue Lagoon and go from there if you want to, like an Adam and Eve type situation, but easily you could dismay somebody into believing all kinds of things. And I would hope that eventually somebody would come out and go, you know, the sun and the moon are different than what you were telling us, and wasn't it, one isn't a lesser light, it's getting reflection off the other one, and find out things that we know in our modern day, which makes all of that kind of null and void. But again, I guess the main kernel of this video is the fact that there has been a event known as the Younger Dryas event, where it appears like we had some volcanism attached to it, perhaps a solar flare of one of these cometary fragments going into the sun and hitting the sun on the side of the sun that's facing us, and it burped back out, boom, a solar flare to us. Easily that could be happening. That could be happening, and the fact that we got hit by fragmentary comet, and it could be the answer to the equation is D, all of the above, or variations on a theme. And instead of trying to fight against it as a people, we should look into it definitely and see if we can figure out what really did happen. It may run a little different or contrary to what people are thinking in a modern time, and all these people could be off a little bit for some reason. And the balling aneroid could have been from either a early initial cometary strike, or that could be from a volcano thing, you know, like Krakatoa, and it set things off that made this happen, and then the comet hit us, and then it hit the sun too and caused a solar flare. There could be a lot of things. None of these people like Robert Schoch, Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, or anybody have to be necessarily wrong unless they say none of the other things happened, it's just this. Well, then they'd be wrong about that part of it, but they wouldn't be wrong about what they showed themselves either, would they? But the kernel of this is that going through 4 ice ages where all these things lived through it hunky-dory, everything's just fine, they were able to migrate and do whatever it took to make it happen. All of a sudden in this Younger Dryas event, they didn't. 200 at least of the major fauna of this planet were wiped off the face of the earth, just like a dinosaur extinction, just like this, just like that. Over 55 genera taken off this planet. Clovis people, gone. All at one time. And what happened so drastically that didn't happen the other 4 times we're looking at here over the last 400,000 years or so, that happened this time, that caused it to be where none of these things that we have the records of are even here anymore? And I think the answer of that has already been shown to us with the Younger Dryas events. Whether it was a combination or two, D, all of the above, as I say, well, that's a possibility. I'm throwing it right out there. I'm going to circle that answer, D, all of the above. Let me know what you think downstairs here on this, guys. But I've gone deep down that rabbit hole about 20 times now, and come back out, and gone in and come back out, and then waited years, and then went through it again and through it again, and then now in the modern time we have Randall Carlson and all these coming out trying to show this effect, and I've gotten a whole lot of more pieces of the puzzle. And something simple as the statement of, these guys all lived through this 4 times here, just as bad and everything else. So what's different? Well, if we zoom in on that one of the Younger Dryas, there's this hiccup, kaboom, bam, heartbeat that's there. And it's not the normal heartbeat. Here's where the Earth almost had a heart attack. And along with this, there's a pinch point here of the Y bottleneck of Y DNA of males that have been shown to be, wow, it correlates along with that too. I'm going to do a separate video on that, and hopefully I won't ramble on for 30 minutes about that. But maybe I'll just make connections too, like I've done in this video, and try to give you an explanation of it. But what happened? that caused 200 animals to leave off the planet so quick that never was an effect for the other 4 or whatever. I think that pinpoints the fact that the younger Dryas is viable. Over and above everything that Randall Carlson can show about floods, which is amazing when he gets into it. Sure, I knew about the Badlands and this, that, and the other, and then, of course, the Grand Canyon. But, this is much worse than that. I mean, some of these areas I've never been into in the United States and seen, and nobody's ever pointed out to it like, well, the water used to be up here, and it carved through this whole area, so that's a pretty big flood. And if you get into it deep, they'll show you there was repeated floods, and there was Lake Agassiz that released out in this other lake that would build up with an ice wall, and then whoa, all out and everything, and did it a few times. Is that it? Or did the other things that we're looking at, and it shows from the black mat layer, happen, and it's a little different, not than we think this time, it's a little different than you told us because of what y'all thought. Because before these people came out with it, or even in a modern day, they, in so disproof of the biblical flood and possibilities, they wanted to say nothing like that ever happened. And it's like, well, here's one that did. Here's a dinosaur bone. Look at that. Here's 200 creatures that used to live on this planet, including the Clovis people, that are all gone at this point, along with the Salutrians, who a lot of people believe just became the Clovis people because of the representation of their points, including Dennis from the Smithsonian, believe it or not. Anyhow, I think we're about done. I could just sit and ramble on for hours after this point, but I've beaten that horse to death here. And that's another thing that was gone, was a primordial little small horse that had happened before. We got horses on the planet now, Mustangs and everything over in North America, but they were brought back over again. America used to have camels, saber-toothed tigers, all kinds of creatures. Look at this list here of the animals that left during this small little fragment in history that really changed the whole world and gave us a lot of our mythologies, which led down to this day. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy. If you're not subscribed already, hit that, and make sure that you've got notifications on, because YouTube has an knack of going, well, y'all didn't really want to see more of his stuff, did you? And knock people off of that quite often. Anyhow, we're going to get on to another subject, and I'll try to release this before I release the other one, where I make a few mentions, because it's one of those things I go, mention, blah, 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 and lo and behold, if I could spend 30, 40 minutes telling you about and blah, 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 then it wouldn't seem so vague whenever I say it. And hopefully a lot of y'all are into these topics and are finding things from so many different forms and so many other people's different rabbit holes. I mean, I hate myself looking down rabbit holes sometimes because I find things that aren't true at all. But in that effect, sometimes I do find out something and I'm like, aha. It's like going metal detecting and beep, beep, beep. And is this just a pop can lid, or is it something special? And sometimes it's something special, and then all of a sudden what it shows me goes with this and goes with that and means so much more than the artifact itself. Channel's based on it, kind of. Y'all enjoy. Peace.